Hello everyone and welcome back to yet another video. This video isn't going to be a happy one. It's an unfortunate video because we're going to be talking about a person who received a botched hair transplant and they unfortunately ended up taking their own life. So this article comes from metro.co.uk and it was written by Tom Sanders and it was published October 28th, 2024 at 3:14 p.m. and updated October 29th, 2024 at 9:37 a.m. The title of the article is Student Kills Himself After Botched Beard Transplant by Estate Agent. Now, before I even get into this article, I think we should understand that, okay, although hair transplants can be very expensive in the West, that expense typically comes with some sort of quality assurance. Granted, there are doctors here in the United States where I am, even in the UK, Canada, and even Germany and France who do mess up, who do horrible jobs, right? But that issue is even more amplified when you start to go to countries like Turkey in order to get these sort of, cosmetic procedures done, because there is no sort of oversight, I guess you can say real meaningful government oversight that prevents people from doing these transplants, right? Really, people who are unqualified can just get taken off the street one day and kind of thrown into a clinic after a couple of rounds of training, and they start to, I guess you can say, perform on people, but I would say maybe experiment on people who may not even know they're being experimented on by somebody who really doesn't have any experience. And this might be the case over here. So let's read a part of this article. This person is, the person who sadly took their life is Matthew Vierre Latour. I'll just call him Matthew Latour. And this is a picture of him. He looked like a really cool guy, and unfortunately this got to him. So the article starts by saying, a French student took his own life after undergoing a botched beard transplant in Turkey carried out by an estate agent posing as a surgeon. Can you believe that, guys? An estate agent posing as a surgeon. This person had no business doing this operation whatsoever. Matthew Latour, 24, visited Istanbul in March for the transplant, which cost him just €1,300, 5 times less than the procedure costs in France. The young Frenchman booked the procedure after seeing the clinic carried the stamp of approval from the Turkish Ministry of Health. Really? Interesting. His grieving father Jakis told French media. So that's an interesting thing. I haven't personally seen the Turkish Ministry of Health give a stamp of approval to certain clinics in Turkey. I know Turkey has a bunch of, kind of ad hoc hair transplant clinics where they get a bunch of people, they shove them in a room, and then they start, doing these procedures on them, and they lower the price down due to the amount of patients they have. But there isn't any real focus from an actual hair transplant physician, or surgeon rather. It's just some random people, some random quote-unquote clinicians or whatever who begin to do the operation. Sometimes you get good results because there are people who have been trained for an excess amount of years and decades to the point where they effectively become hair transplant specialists, right? Maybe they went to school for that, right? Or some sort of established line of education where they can prove themselves. Other times the person may not have any experience at all. And this was the case here. Going on with the article, it says, but the procedure turned out to be an unmitigated disaster. During the operation, in which 4,000 grafts were removed from the back of Mr. Latour's head and transferred to his face, the clinician lost around 1,000 of the grafts. Now guys, I'm going to step in here. The clinician lost 1,000 of the 4,000 grafts that were extracted to make his beard. First off, this guy did not need 4,000 grafts to have a proper beard transplant. He did not need that on his face to have a good beard, right? There was no reason why that should have been the case. That is too many grafts, first off. Second, how do you just lose 1,000 of the grafts? What did you do, right? I recall a post that I saw about 2 years ago. I think it was on Reddit or some sort of hair transplant forum, where somebody was getting a hair transplant from the donor area, the back of the head, to the front of their scalp, and it was botched. And they revealed that during the transplant surgery, the clinician dropped the pool of hair transplants, right? So typically when they do hair transplants, they put it into some sort of container, and that container has water in order to hydrate the hair follicles, the grafts, so they don't dry out and die. This clinician dropped it on the floor, right? So imagine the horror here. Now, this article doesn't explain how that happened. It's just that the clinician lost around 1,000 grafts. They probably destroyed it, this particular clinician. So the article goes on to say, this caused Matthew's beard to grow in an irregular, poorly mapped fashion, which saw hair sprouting at unnatural angles across his face, causing him misery. His dad told BFM TV, quote, "When it started to grow out, it looked like a hedgehog. It was unmanageable. He was suffering. He wasn't doing well. He was in pain. Suffered from burns, and he couldn't sleep." Unquote. Now, I'm thinking to myself, he suffered from burns? You don't get a burn by doing an FUE or a FUT hair transplant. So I don't know if this was a result of maybe he was trying to get laser hair removal on his face on the botched beard transplant to the hair follicles that were put on his face. Maybe that was the case, or maybe something else happened in that room where he received the hair transplant to his face. Yeah. And the article goes on to say, Matthew later researched the surgeon and found he was not qualified at all. He was an estate agent. Okay, so this person who did the operation on Matthew, he was an estate agent. He wasn't a physician. He wasn't a clinician. He wasn't a surgeon of any kind. He wasn't a doctor. He was just some sort of representative of the hair transplant clinic. That's pathetic. And deeply horrible that this happened to this guy. The article going on to say, quote, "As a result of his botched operation, the student fell into a deep depression and suffered from severe body dysmorphic disorder, a mental health condition which causes people to obsess about defects in their appearance. His family later contacted a Belgian specialist who was attempting to correct the procedure but told Matthew his scalp would never recover the patch where the grafts had been lost." The article says, "He entered a vicious circle and couldn't get out of it," his father said. After falling into a deep depression, Matthew later took his own life. 3 months after the initial operation, Matthew took his own life at his student accommodation in Paris, the Telegraph reports. His father is now campaigning to improve awareness about the risks of seemingly inexpensive health tourism. He said it would be a, quote, "tribute to Matthew," unquote, if his son's shocking experience could help prevent similar tragedies from happening again. I don't even know what to say about this, right? This is just all around tragic, and people should be careful. Now, I wish they actually named the quote-unquote doctor or quote-unquote surgeon, estate agent really, who did this particular procedure on Mr. Latour, the late Mr. Latour, because this is just ridiculous. Now, they mention a Belgian specialist. I think it might have been Dr. Mwamba. Dr. Mwamba is the GOAT. He specializes in repairing bad hair transplants, botched hair transplants. And he likes to, give things straight up. He tells people like, look, sometimes, we can't fix you. You have some severe damages to your scalp, or he tries to give people a realistic expectation. He's also a really good hair transplant surgeon as well, right? So you can check out his website over here, but I suspect that this is the expert they contacted because there's another channel on YouTube. This channel is called Rate This Clinic. I would highly recommend you give them a subscription because they have some really good videos, right? And I think the person that runs this channel had a horrible experience with a hair transplant clinic in Turkey called Asli Tarskan in Istanbul, right? And this person was butchered. So they actually went to Dr. Mwamba to get their hair transplant issue fixed. So you can see this person goes through their experience, what they went through. how they're getting repaired, the repairs that were made by Dr. Mwamba, the attempts to remove certain grafts in order to replace them, and also using beard hair to kind of fill out the donor area, and just try to reach some sense of normalcy after being butchered, right? And it's very sad that, you know, you're trying to come to get help, so you go to a hair mill effectively in Turkey, and then you ultimately end up getting kind of screwed over. So you have to pay even more money in order to get your issue fixed. And this is him 1 month out after getting some repairs by Dr. Mwamba. And it's a very regretful experience for those people who have to deal with getting a botched hair transplant, because sometimes you can be botched so much to the point where you're not going to, even any good repair isn't going to bring you back completely to where you would have been had you just gone with the better hair transplant surgeon, and definitely never to where you would have been before you had hair loss. That's not really expected. You have to be realistic about, you know, where you can get after a hair transplant, but sometimes it can be butchered so much that that really does become a dream. You'll never even have a semblance of your old hairline. But it looks like this guy right at this clinic, who I've been meaning to kind of interview, got somewhat of a good result from his repair from Dr. Mwamba. And yeah, that's a lot of issues to deal with. And I feel horrible for Mr. Latour. Dr. Rasman also talked about this on his blog, Balding blog. Dr. Rasman, for those of you who don't know, he's the inventor of the FUE hair transplant, along with various other inventions. He's a great guy. I interviewed him on this channel. But yeah, he talked about this on his blog, actually, a couple days ago. Right now, at the time of recording this video, it's October 29th, 2024. And he talked about on October 18th, 2024, in his article called Depleted Donor Reserves from Turkey. Dr. Rasman writes, "Too many young men go to Turkey to get a bargain. They get hairlines that they want, not what is normal. They want a lot of grafts because they think it's a bargain, then find out that they have lost their donor reserves, and possibly they don't understand that hair loss is progressive, which happens in almost 100% of young men who have hair transplants or transplants." Here is such an example. I feel sorry for him. This is a really horrible hair transplant. Like, the donor is decimated. Goodness gracious, what is this nonsense over here? And this is the result of going to a bad hair transplant clinic in Turkey. Again, it's not to say that you won't get a good result from some of these clinics, right? You know, the law of numbers and the amount of transplants these hair mills do, eventually they will have a competent person come in and actually do a good job, or someone there might fortuitously do a good enough job. But it tends to be the case, at least as of late, you know, a lot of people are coming up with issues, right? Over here, another article from Dr. William Rasman, right? Cheap hair transplant FUE factory mill in Turkey and Iran. Interesting. I haven't really heard much about hair transplants in Iran. So this is kind of new to me. So the article says doctors in Europe are feeling the pinch from competition from doctors in Istanbul, Turkey, and Iran, who have set up hair transplant mills. This is similar to what the Russians did in the 1990s when setting up cataract mills for eye surgery. These are all FUE procedures, and I doubt the ladies performing the FUE are licensed doctors. It seems they are offering travel packages that cover airfare, hotel, and surgery for a 3-day stay. Of course, there's no guarantee of quality, and there's no recourse if something goes wrong when these people return home after the surgery. So whatever, right? There is no sort of assurance that if something goes wrong, you know, you can contact somebody in Iran or Turkey that, okay, maybe we can get something, you know, some sort of monetary reimbursement if someone was injured or they just got super horrible results due to the incompetency of the person performing the transplant. That's usually not the case. And now finally going to this article from 2021, September 14th. Man dies suspiciously during hair transplant. And this took place in Istanbul, right? Ibrahim Gol, 28, working as a hairdresser in Italy, returned to Istanbul to have a hair transplant operation and buy supplies for his shop. Going under an operation in the hospital in the, I don't really know how to pronounce this word, Bakler district, Gol suddenly collapsed while the hair transplant was in progress and eventually lost his life. While Gol's body was taken to the morgue of the Forensic Medicine Institution for autopsy, hospital officials initially claimed that he died of a heart attack. The police detained Mehmet Albayrak, I don't know how to pronounce his name, the doctor who performed the hair transplant. And then the article says, quote, "When the patient mentioned a chest pain during the hair transplant procedure, we stopped the operation immediately," Albayrak said. Albayrak said, I guess that's his name, the doctor that did the transplant, in his statement to the police. Following his interrogation, Albayrak was arrested by an Istanbul court on the charge of causing death by negligence. No official statement has been made by the hospital yet. Now, I think the only reason why this guy was able to, get some sort of, some sort of justice in this sort of issue is that he is a native to Turkey. He's from Turkey. He was born there. That's his background, right? So if anything, he probably has some legal rights. But you, the person visiting, you have to be careful. I'm not against medical terrorism, right? Medical tourism is a solution for many, especially those who live in the United States of America, where health care expenses can be very high, whether it's for a cosmetic procedure or something that you might need to prolong your life. So I'm not against medical tourism whatsoever. In fact, one day I would like to do some medical tourism myself. But the issue here is that you have to be very careful in the companies and institutions you interact with that are offering you these flashy deals. And sometimes, some things can be too good to be true, right? And unfortunately, Ibrahim Gol and over here, Matthew Latour, they had issues where either one took their life or the other one, was having a heart attack, but the doctor didn't seem to care enough to stop the procedure and properly assist his patient, being Ibrahim. This article about Matthew Latour, the man who killed himself after getting a botched beard transplant, talks about body dysmorphic disorder. And I wanted to go to the website, the International OCD Foundation, where it states that, about approximately 80% of those people, 80% of people with body dysmorphic disorder report that they have experienced suicidal thoughts. And about 1 in 4 of these people, so about 25%, have unfortunately attempted suicide, right? So that's something to remember. So be very careful. I know in the space of hair loss, we can be very critical on ourselves. But don't jump into a procedure because you're desperate. Taking your time, having the most proper consultations you can have only helps you make the right decision. Time only helps you make the right decision. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. It's a bit ad hoc. And hopefully you guys can get some value out of it. I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.